Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 67 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. As we continue to look forward to having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months, we simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We're highlighting another great organization this week and have Susan Wall with us today. Susan is the chairperson of Keep Belmont Beautiful. Susan, it's great to have you on and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time. And just for the record, we're recording on Halloween Day, Monday the 31st. So hopefully nothing scary will happen, right, Naomi? Right, exactly. Okay. So we're going to get right to it. Susan, if you don't mind, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization, anything that you'd like to share.
Well, Keep Belmont Beautiful is an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful and has been so since April of 2021. We work in partnership with the City of Belmont and the citizens to educate and involve the community in litter and waste reduction, recycling, beautification, and the conservation of natural resources.
Okay, so if you, I should have looked up what episode number we had Keep Gaston Beautiful on. I think you early before we were recorded, you said you had shared that one, so we greatly appreciate that. So how does, what's a day in the life, your role with Keep Belmont Beautiful, and maybe the day in the life of Keep Belmont Beautiful, kind of what's going on, as related to specifically what your role is and the mission of the organization, which I guess you just laid out the mission of the organization, but can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, there are a variety of things that we're involved with in terms of the day in the life of KBB, as we're referred to around town. We have two major cleanups annually, one in the spring and one in the fall. This year was the first time that we had to cancel our fall cleanup because of Hurricane Ian.
Oh, wow, yeah, that was bad timing.
and in that we work with the city and knew that they may have had a lot of responsibilities in the follow-up to that storm. But in addition to that, we have a Yard of the Month program that is in the spring of the year, April, May, and June. We have school grants and judging where they apply for a grant, the public schools in Belmont, and we can award up to $350 for school beautification. In addition to that, we have a cigarette butt box program where those are
they around the city?
Specifically located in front of restaurants, of which we have volunteers that come and clean those out. So we're working on developing more smaller neighborhood cleanups where they're going on throughout the year, and hoping to get citizens and neighborhoods and businesses involved in helping us clean up Belmont.
So I'll let you slide on that very first question a little bit. So how did you, about telling a little bit about yourself, so how did you end up involved with Keep Belmont Beautiful?
Well, my husband and I downsized, and we lived in Charlotte, South Charlotte, for about 30 years, and had always talked about moving to a small town because we both grew up in small communities. We like the engagement, and we like the connectivity, and we finally had the opportunity to do that, and I say that there were breadcrumbs that led us to Belmont and Gaston County. We love the natural resources and natural history of Gaston County, and wanted to give back to our community. So I was walking downtown and familiarizing myself with Belmont and saw a need with some of the the flower beds and walked into City Hall and offered my help and was connected with KBB and attended my first meeting in 2014.
Oh, 2014.
So,
okay. That was my next question.
And ended up joining the board and that kind of got the ball.
So how big is the board? How many typically people are typically people? How many people are typically involved and on the board and when you're having events going on?
Well, there are approximately 12 to 15 people involved on the board, voting and non-voting members. Public Works is a non-voting member. We have a youth advisory council or individual from the high school that's on our board. In addition to that, we have non-voting members that have participated and are working in an advisory capacity.
Like associate members, like would that be businesses involved, or is it just individuals? Or
individuals, citizens from the community. In addition to that, about 10 to 12 voting members.
Gotcha.
So,
So, if I'm doing my math right, that's going on 8 years or so involved with the organization.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So looking back, on the 8 years, this is something really stand out, something that you guys have accomplished, something that was like, wow, I'm really glad we did that, or something you're most proud of, related to your time.
Yeah. The spring plant sale is something that's occurred over the last 7 years. We took a break during COVID, but as most people took breaks with a variety of events and activities. But in addition to that, our Flower Power initiative is something that I founded and pitched to our executive board. And again, starting with offering to weed a couple of beds in the city, and I circled back probably 4 years later, and the executive committee, in addition to the city, agreed to let Flower Power volunteers help weed and maintain the beds in the downtown area. And then last spring, we were awarded North Carolina Main Street Champion Award for that initiative in support of.
All right, so how does that come about? Is that something someone has to, I guess, nominate you guys for, or someone has to take notice?
Yes.
Or
the Main Street, Belmont Main Street Committee nominated us, and then the Department of Commerce that program runs through the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
And we were nominated.
And
awarded.
Okay. Is that something that there was an event that you had to go to or something for that, or is it just something that came here? Or
it was a Zoom meeting at CityWorks with approximately 30 volunteers.
That's become part of our, I guess, common lexicon now, isn't it? Zoom and virtual meetings for the last 2.5, 3 years.
Exactly.
Well, good. That's exciting. So looking ahead, I mean, I know being involved 8 years. Well, how long has Keep Belmont Beautiful been around? Do you know the history or how long it's actually been?
21 years since April. Actually, KBB and I share a birth date, and that would
really
in April of. Well, the year is a little different.
I understand. But the
April
same.
21st.
April 21st. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So it was destiny that you were going to be involved with.
I
KBB
think so.
With the birthday is the same.
But I will say the KGB, as we refer to them, or Keep Gastonia Beautiful, was instrumental in assisting KBB in helping us found and become an affiliate.
Oh, good.
With our bylaws, Jenny Stoltz worked with a variety of our board in helping us.
That's a good example. There's no reason why municipalities can't collaborate on things, right?
Well, I think that's really probably the most important thing about KBB is the collaboration that's been going on, whether it's with the KGB or the Riverkeeper or the City of Belmont or the citizens. It's really imperative.
That was good because you just named another, just in that one sentence, two of our previous podcast episodes. We had the Riverkeeper on, had John Searby on, as well as the KGB, which is funny, right? It's like a secret Russian organization, Naomi.
Yeah,
KBB sounds nicer, and KGB sounds a little covert.
Well, we like to say we have clandestine meetings.
That's funny. That would go well with our online on-hold jokes, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So, any other, you've mentioned a lot of things. Any other initiatives maybe that we hadn't touched on or programs? I'm not sure what you would call those that we haven't touched on already that you guys are doing year to year, or anything else specific?
And really that's been the focus, or at least some of the things that I've brought to the table in serving Keep Belmont Beautiful.
All right, as the chair and looking ahead, we like to ask, looking ahead, everybody says 5 to 10 years. Doesn't necessarily have to be 5 to 10 years, but are there any initiatives coming up, any plans you guys have, or big things you'd like to do, or just, how do you see the organization looking, 5 to 10 years down the road, or shorter?
I would say we're trying currently to utilize social media to help educate the public and share information. I think, for example, recycling is a good example of there are a lot of do's and don'ts, and I think we have more and more questions about what can and cannot be recycled in Belmont. And so we're trying to do we're making more of an effort to be able to articulate that. I think people want to do the right thing, but they're a little confused about what they need to do.
Sure.
Because it's ever evolved.
Right. And some things are, some recyclables, we don't even have the capacity anymore to deal with them here locally. So it is a confusing question. I happen to live in the city of Gastonia, and it's a little confusing even for us here as well. So, this is a podcast about, Gaston County in general, good things happening. So knowing what now that you've lived in Gaston County for a while, why would you say Gaston County in general? Obviously, Belmont is the focus here today, but why is Gaston County and Belmont better? Because Keep Belmont Beautiful is here.
Because of our ability to collaborate, to work together in a positive way, and to help the city articulate some of the things that are really critical to our environment and our growth.
Okay. So is there anything I haven't asked, I should have asked? Anything you'd like to share? Now, before we finish, we'll make sure we come back around and make sure we'll share with our listeners how to get in touch with the organization, where you guys can be found online, or any volunteer opportunities or any events coming up, that kind of thing. But are there any other questions I haven't asked, or something that I should have? Because remember, I am far from a professional interviewer, and sometimes I even skip a question or two by accident. Anything I haven't asked, or anything you'd like to share?
Well, we really are concerned about single-use plastics.
Okay.
And we really would like to use our voice to raise awareness that we need to be concerned about habits that we have that are not sustainable for our community, for the world that we live in, and for generations to come. So we need to be more connected to the natural world. And I think in a world where we're becoming less connected, we love the natural world. We embrace it. And it's important to us. But I think it's really important for us to focus on our habits and how sustainable they are And I hope that we'll be able to be a voice for our community, Gastonia, Gaston County, Belmont. And I hope that we can work together with the smaller communities.
Is it the definition of irony that you started that with single-use plastic and we brought you a bottled water? Sorry, that's not funny. But it's interesting, and this is a question I just thought of, because of some habits that we developed here, as an example, during COVID, where pre-COVID, we had water stations, water refillable, water coolers. I don't remember what they're even called, around, and then we had to stop using them, because of COVID.
Right.
And then that brought back the habit of having bottled water around because of individual uses and not wanting to share, not even wanting to, we even temporarily shut our water fountains down.
Right.
Did you see that? Is that something that's an interesting, because there's so many habits that I've seen develop, not just with our company or me personally, but even out in the community, these habits that we developed or that came back during COVID, and some of them have stuck around. And so, as an example, the bottled water, and here I am with this is what I bring every day, and I put water in it. I try myself not to drink a bunch of bottled water because I have this that I can reuse, and it keeps ice better. And
yes,
but from an organization like yourself, from that perspective, did you see some of those habits make things worse a little bit during an event like COVID?
Yes. Actually, we saw more PPE on the streets.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
More litter. And it seemed like there was more takeout that was thrown by the wayside. So things like that. We talked about, for the first time at our cleanup, not offering bottled water, and articulating to the public about bringing your own cups.
Sure.
And then having an area where we can fill your cup up with water. But,
Yeah, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago in Tampa, and one of the things I liked is, and I see this a lot of places now, is where they out in front of most of the conference rooms or in the hallways, they have the places where you can refill your thermoses or cups like this, or if you have a happen of bottled water, you could refill it as opposed to just the one use. So, sorry, that was a little rabbit hole we just went down, but it's an interesting point of trying to get back to what is the new normal related to the environment and things like that, because I think some of those habits, that we got away from might be good, but some of them probably that came back or that we started during COVID. I don't like to use that word too much anymore. It's something that we need to think about. So
we talked about if somebody didn't bring their, cup, that we'd offer paper cups.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
But we were also promoting a prize given to those that wore T-shirts from the past, from our previous cleanups, instead of giving new ones and embellishing those and giving awards for, the oldest T-shirt or the most embellished T-shirt. So we're trying to think outside of the box. We're trying to think about not utilizing marketing materials that include plastic and walking the talk.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because people. Well, I shouldn't say people. People like me probably do pay attention to that kind of thing. I'm not sure everybody does, but I'm that weird. What's the word? I want to say analytical instead of anal. Sorry. Some people would call it a little insane. But I'm a detail guy, so I do appreciate that and like to pay attention to those details. Observant. Thank you, Naomi, for making it sound better than I was making it sound. Making it sound not so bad.
Generally, I think people want to do the right thing.
Correct.
It's just bringing it to the forefront and raising the awareness. Right. And I think there's a disconnect. We haven't been thinking about some of these.
Well, we've definitely evolved into a disposable world the last 20, 30, 40 years, as opposed to maybe how how it was previous to that. So that's convenience, and if it was something I could make recycling or whatever easier. As an example, having those water refill stations at places where people can easily access them. Those are kind of things. If it's easy for people, they'll do it. If it's a burden, they might not. So that's interesting. That's an interesting point. So I appreciate you sharing that. So one thing that we like to do on these episodes is we have a few questions about Gaston County. And luckily, you have been here long enough that you can answer these questions. So we're not letting you off the hook because you used to live in Charlotte. Once you come over here, come to this side of the river,
we love being on this.
We accept you, and you no longer live in the gateway to Gastonia. You're actually in Gaston County now. So we love you for that. But this is the questions that your team members and fellow board members and family. This is really what they want to know about you. Okay.
Okay.
These are very serious questions, very serious topics. So I'm going to make the assumption, if you've been here for 8 years, that you have been to Tony's Ice Cream in Gaston.
I have.
Okay. So what is your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Well, I have to say strawberry. That's my grandson's favorite.
Okay. Very good. So have you had the opportunity to try Sundrop or Cheerwine?
I will say I'm an iced tea girl.
Okay. Well, all right. Fair enough. You can't argue with that answer. Favorite local restaurant?
Well, I have to admit the Lodge in Belmont.
I've been to the Lodge more than once. It's terrific. Yeah. I would agree that it's a great place. How about favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County, or favorite park, or just something you like to do around?
I'm a birder, so
Okay.
I love the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park and Rocky Branch are my favorites.
Okay, yeah, that's two great locations. All right, here's the most important of these questions because I can ask this one. UNC, Duke, or NC State?
NC State.
Oh.
So.
You don't have your headphones on, but she just gave an applause for that one.
Well, I'm a Gaston County master gardener. So.
Okay. So you're due with the cooperative.
Exactly.
So, but just for the record, that is the correct answer. And for the record, this goes on the list of one of the top episode for sure, Susan. So thank you. Susan, what is something very few people know about you?
Well, that I only recently became a master gardener.
Okay.
I've been talking about it for years. I think a lot of people assumed that I was, but only became one last spring. So.
Well, good. Well, you know what? I would think that's a compliment if people assume that you were already from knowing you. I think
I kept saying when
great.
I retire and had the time, so I'm really glad that I did it. It's been.
Do you find that you're busier now that you are retired? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Are you find yourself busier or
Definitely.
But good busy? I hope. I assume.
All good busy.
Okay.
Yeah. Good trouble.
Is there a book or anything? We kind of phrase a book, blog, or article, or anything that you podcast even that you would recommend to our listeners that might be something good for them to check out.
Well, I'm always reading. I'm always listening.
Okay.
I'm always trying to learn. And The Nature of Oaks by Professor Doug Ptolemy is a great book and a great resource.
Okay.
But it's always hard to say just one because I'm always reading.
Well, that's good. Yeah, one reason I did that question because I'm a big reader. I've always got one or two books that I'm reading. And if I'm in my vehicle, I'm typically listening to podcasts or again, to your point, learning is just, I don't know, it's fun. It's always, I'm always like hearing about new things or different things going on. So, again, I appreciate you kind of indulging us on those, local Gaston County questions. And we got a couple more questions and we'll finish up here. But, again, you've been here long enough, I think, also to answer this question. So besides Keep Belmont Beautiful, why is Gaston County such a great place in your view?
Because of its natural history and outdoors.
It is a unique to be a landlocked county with so many things. It is Crowder's Mountain, Belmont, the river, Lake Wiley, Stowe Botanical is another great Belmont location. And so I appreciate that. But yeah, it is a very unique, and we're, close enough to Charlotte if we want to go to the, other side of the river on occasion, or the mountains or the beach.
Yes.
It's really a great location. So
wonderful access.
So here's my, I say that, the joke is I say this every episode. This is my favorite question, Susan. So knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Well, get a horticulture degree.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that is good. We have not had that as an answer.
Do what you love.
Is that part of your passion? What you love, is that kind of what you brought you to master gardening and
yes,
and keep Belmont beautiful?
Yes,
kind of fits right down your passion.
Right down. Yep. My grandmother was instrumental, as often grandparents are,
right.
And I grew up in Southeast Florida and in the 50s and 60s, and it was a wonderful and beautiful and natural place.
Wow.
And spent a lot of time out in the swamps birding and in the garden with my grandmother. So.
Okay, very good. So do you have your own garden at home?
Yes. It's a bit of a postage stamp since we downsized.
Sure.
But I knew that I'd never have a problem finding a place to garden.
Well, good. Yeah, right in the middle of asking that question, boy, that better be a yes, or I'm going to be in trouble for asking that question from a master gardener.
No, don't.
We'll have to edit that out if it wasn't a yes.
Don't worry, you'll find me down in the beds downtown, the flower beds.
Okay, very good. So down in the dirt, getting your hands dirty.
Absolutely.
I've always felt that was that kind of thing just gives me a sense of accomplishment. It feels like you're getting something done. The longer it takes to scrub the hands and clothes, the more you accomplish. Right, Naomi? I saw you shaking your head no there.
I was like, no, not for me.
So, Susan, this has really been good. I appreciate your time and sharing about Keep Belmont Beautiful. So, again, the most important part of all these episodes is, bringing awareness to the organization. So, can you share where our listeners can find information?
Sure.
Where they can go to volunteer, just anything and everything, any events coming up, or anything that you don't mind sharing.
No, you can call our office, and you can Google us, Keep Belmont Beautiful. All the information will come up relevant to our phone number. You can find us through the City of Belmont's website, which is cityofbelmont.org, under Public Works. You can find us on Facebook.
I did visit the website and the Facebook page. It was very good.
And Instagram.
Oh, Instagram too. Okay.
Instagram
good.
As well, yeah. So all of those places, it's pretty easy to find us. Just Google us. Keep Belmont Beautiful.
So what's the next? So we're getting into fall, early winter. What kind of things are next this time of year? Or is there anything, do you do anything with, I don't know, leaves and planting? I guess this is the time of year to plant some things. Am I correct?
This is a wonderful time of year. If we'd get a break with the weather in terms of more rain, since we're a little bit into a drought right now.
Right.
But typically fall is time for planting, whether it's shrubs or trees.
Right.
And so it's a good time for that if we just get a little more rain.
So are you going to be doing any trick-or-treating tonight?
Well, we'll be answering the door.
Let's hope. Let's hope the weather.
All those.
Let's get the rain that we need, but not during the times when maybe kids might be out trick-or-treating tonight.
Exactly.
So let's not put a damper on that. So any last words of wisdom or anything else you'd like to share before we close this episode out?
Well, just it's a wonderful time of year to plant shrubs and trees.
Okay.
And I would encourage you to do that. And even more importantly, there's a lot of discussion about planting trees, but there's not enough discussion about care and maintenance of
Fair enough.
trees.
Okay.
And that's going to be really important going forward, especially with the amount of growth that we're seeing in this area. So.
Right. And one of my favorite sayings, I don't know who said it, or maybe it's just some proverb from somewhere, but I love, because I repeat this all my fact. I went back to a few episodes here and there. You probably hear me say it more than once on this podcast, is the saying that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
Yes.
So you might, sometimes with trees, you might not be able to enjoy the planting yourself, but someone will be, and it will help, typically help the environment. But that brings a good point about, care and maintenance of all those things. Everything, you can't just plant it and leave it and quit and not worry about it, right?
No, we have to think in sustainable ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Susan, this has been really good. I appreciate your time, and appreciate the work that you guys are doing for our county. Because I get over to Belmont as much as I can, and that's a great asset to Gaston County, and that downtown, small towns could take a lesson from what Belmont has done with their downtown area, and it's nice to hear that you've had something to do with that. So I appreciate that. So as I normally do, I'm going to get my book recommendation and my thought or quote for the week. And my book recommendation this week is one I read several months ago. It's called Worth Doing Wrong by a gentleman named Arnie Malham. Sorry if I butchered his last name, but it's a business culture book, I guess, for lack of a better description. But it's really good, and it's an unusual background for a culture book. It's an advertising agency, but what their primary focus is one you wouldn't expect. So I won't spoil that. But if you're out there, whether it's an organization like Keep Belmont Beautiful or any nonprofit or any business, I think it's worth. It's a relatively short read and worth it to learn maybe how to have improve the culture within your organization. And my quote this week is one I really like. It's from a famous gentleman named Nelson Mandela, who's someone that I admire and have studied a little bit, but it's on accomplishment. And sometimes when we're trying to get something big accomplished or something really big done, and you're in the middle of it, it seems like it's kind of difficult. But Nelson Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." So sometimes I know here at GSM, and maybe some things in my personal life, it seems like I might have quit right when we were about to really accomplish something, or I just in the middle of it, you feel like it's never going to happen, but you just have to persevere and keep going. So hopefully, maybe we can take that one to heart. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And continue to give us a good rating, as long as it's a 5-star rating, as I'm sure this episode will get, because that helps get us noticed. Thanks again to Susan for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services, and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.